All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here. I'm Allison Randall, Education Consultant and Vice President at College MatchPoint. I'm here with Delora Sirrett, Julie Ritchie, and our colleague Meredith, who's going to be running the Q&A. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are in Central Texas, like I am, it is a beautiful day. And so extra points for coming to a webinar when the weather is this nice. We're so delighted to share with you this year's admission results and trends at UT Austin. Before we dive into that exciting content, I want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. We will be sending a recording of today's video along with the slide deck and a few of our resources that we will refer to in the presentation today. As we are going through, please feel free to drop questions into the Q&A. If it's a question that we feel like lots of other people might have, we'll answer it live. If we don't get a chance to, or if we feel like it's something that pertains to just a specific student or experience, we'll answer it in the Q&A. Any questions we don't get to, don't worry, we'll follow up with you after the presentation. All right. I am excited to talk about this. At College MatchPoint, we've guided students on their journey to the 40 acres for the past 16 years. Most of the students we've worked with were not auto-admit students. And we're so proud of the students that we have who have thrived as Longhorns and or are currently thriving on the UT campus. Today, we'll be going through some of the key factors that have been driving the surge in applications, as well as strategies for helping Texas students stand out and prepare applications that really align with UT's passion for students who actively engage in exploring their majors and students who contribute to the common good. Delora is going to start us off with some of the trends from this year's admission results. Delora, take it away.
All right, thank you, Allison. So like Allison said, we're going to start our talk today by taking a closer look at some of the key trends we've noticed now that this year's application cycle at UT has come to a close. All right, so the biggest impact or trend that we've noticed as we've been analyzing UT admissions results is application inflation. Currently, this is UT Austin's second year as a member of the Common Application Platform, which is a centralized application platform that students use to write and submit their college applications. In part because of the ease of use and access to the Common Application, UT experienced massive application inflation, as you can see on this chart. In fact, UT received around 71,000 first-time freshman applications this year, and some numbers are saying or some sources are saying that number can go as high as 75 to 78,000 applications received this year, of which there are only 9,000 spots on UT's campus for first-year freshmen. So for some additional context, in 2020, UT received around 53,000 applications, so that's quite a significant jump. This record high number of applications received by the university leaves us with a 33% increase in applications over a 3-year period, which is quite significant.
And those 70,000 plus applications are for a freshman class
of 9,000.
About 9,000, yeah.
Yep. All right. So outside of the Common Application and UT's membership within that centralized application platform, there are a couple of factors to consider when trying to determine the cause behind this surge in applications. So since the fall of 2020, UT Austin has been following a test optional policy, meaning that students can choose whether or not to submit their standardized test scores to the university as part of their application. This means that traditionally, students who may not have felt that their test scores were in line with a typical UT student could still apply and be a competitive applicant anyway. Additionally, more Texas-based students are deciding to apply to UT Austin, and statistics have been showing that 67% of students across all Texas high schools have been submitting applications to UT, which is another reason for this increase. And finally, UT in general remains an appealing and attractive school to students, not just in Texas, but nationally and internationally as well. It consistently ranks highly on national ranking surveys for top public universities and state flagship universities. It ranks highly for a bevy of programs such as engineering, nursing, business, and the Princeton Review's Hopes and Worries survey finds that UT remains a top 10 dream school for students, whether or not they reside in Texas. All right. I want to discuss the impact of this surge in applications in terms of the data we know. Here's what we've been finding. So as we know, UT admissions is broken down roughly into two categories of applicants. This first category is students who are in the top 6% of their public high school class, otherwise known as auto admits. These students are guaranteed admission to the UT College of Liberal Arts only. In this year's cycle, auto-admit students comprised 75% of the entire incoming freshman class. And it should be noted, while these auto-admit students are guaranteed a major in the liberal arts, many of them are competitive applicants for competitive majors, which makes space an issue for the general applicant pool. The remainder of applicants to UT Austin who are not in the top 6% undergo the holistic application review process, which we'll be speaking to later in this webinar. Non-auto admit students were faced with an 11% admission rate to UT Austin, which places UT Austin in the same echelon as some of the most competitive universities in the nation. There are no guarantees in this applicant pool in terms of admission or admission to a major, and many of them are also pursuing the most competitive majors at UT Austin. Now, if your student is non-auto admit, if they are not an auto admit student and doesn't receive an offer for full admission at UT, they might want to consider the CAP program, the Coordinated Admission Program pathway, at a participating UT system campus, such as UT Arlington and UT San Antonio. Through programs like CAP, students complete 1 year of general education courses at their system campus, and if they maintain a certain GPA, are guaranteed transfer again to the College of Liberal Arts in their sophomore year. That being said, even competitive majors in the College of Liberal Arts are not guaranteed through the CAP pathway. Economics and psychology are two of those competitive majors. In short, UT offers multiple pathways to students who are willing to pursue and earn a degree in the liberal arts, both through the top 6% guarantee and through the CAP program. All right. I want to take a minute to speak a little more specifically about some of the other impacts we are noticing because of this application inflation. The first is impacted majors. UT has a number of majors that are known as impacted, which means that there are significantly more competitive applicants, not just qualified applicants, but competitive applicants than there is space available for that major. These majors include the unspecified business major in the Macomb School of Business. This is the business pathway that all freshman applicants interested in business apply to before determining their particular business concentration later on in, I believe, their sophomore year. There's the computer science major in the College of Natural Sciences, biology in the College of Natural Sciences, all engineering majors in the Cockrell School of Engineering, the architecture major, nursing, which is by far UT's most selective and most competitive major. And within the College of Liberal Arts, there are also two impacted majors, which are psychology and economics. I've also, heard through some grapevines that the data science major is on its way to becoming impacted as well. And so if your student is a student currently at UT or is about to enroll at UT and is hoping to transfer into data science, know that that is no longer an option. That major is closed to internal and external transfers for the next few years. So these impacted majors make it so that there are certain decisions your student will have to make in their UT application. If your student is a UT or bus type student, meaning they want to attend UT above all else, they bleed burnt orange, we recommend looking beyond these impacted majors to increase their likelihood of admission. And these, there are only maybe 10 to 15 impacted majors at a university with over 150 majors to pick from. So we encourage students to keep their options open as well as their minds when it comes to picking a major. If your student is more major focused, meaning there's one major and only one major they can see themselves applying to and studying, the key is to focus on fit to major, cultivating a good fit to major profile, and demonstrating in their essays their fitness to a particular major, which we will be speaking to extensively throughout this webinar.
All right, thanks, Delara. So now that you have a little sense of what's happened with the admissions at UT this year, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means for those students who are not in the top 6%. So they go through a process called holistic review. And that means that UT looks at all of these things when they evaluate a student application. It's really hard to believe that UT, which asks for so much stuff like an expanded resume, 4 essays, letters of rec, grade, all these things, beyond many other schools, that they actually read all of those 71,000, every component of the application, but they really do. It's true. So we're going to be speaking in depth about each of these, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what goes into the holistic review of an application. Next slide, please, Delara. So one of the things to think about before we even go into each item is what Delara had mentioned, which is fit to major. So this is the thing that is important. Every item of a student's application is measured against the student's major they chose on the application. So your entire application is really making a case for why you are a fit to the specific major that you list on your application. And a lot of times students will ask us, well, what's the easiest major to get into at UT? And we always say, okay, it doesn't work to game the system because they can totally tell. Totally doesn't work. So we really encourage students to think about, what are you most curious about? What classes, activities, and hobbies have you naturally gravitated toward and loved so far in high school? And which major or majors do those things align with? And is that a major you're interested in? And if not, let's figure out what you are most interested in and then make a plan to find ways to demonstrate that you have actively explored and had growth experiences related to that major at UT. In other words, we create that fit to major over the course of, a year or two in high school. There's a great resource, by the way, to explore majors at UT, since, like Delara said, there are so many majors. It's called Wayfinder. And you can just Google UT Wayfinder. We'll put it in the Q&A and send it in our follow-up. But it is a great resource to just be able to look at the majors and find things that relate to what you're interested in. So I would encourage you to have your students check that out.
And if you go to visit UT, it's always, even if we live here in Austin and you know UT, it's still a really cool opportunity to go actually take an official tour. And in those tours, sometimes the admissions folks that you're working with, or you can stop in the admissions office and you can ask about what new programs might be coming. For example, I think there's a new program, scheduled to open in a couple of years that's civics and ethics focused. And so there's lots of new stuff coming too. Depending on where you are in your high school career, it might be open by the time you get there. So we always recommend asking about new majors anytime you set foot in an admissions office or an admissions rep visits your campus.
That's a great point. Thanks. Okay, so your transcript. This is by far the most important piece of your application. So your transcript is basically the courses that you have taken in high school and how you've done in them. You really cannot run from low grades at UT. But they also look at rigor. So how rigorous are the courses you're taking? Meaning, when you had the choice between a regular or an honors or AP course, did you take the more advanced course? And how have you done grade-wise in those courses? Also important is whether your transcript matches up with the thing you've chosen on your major to major in, on your application to major in, right? So for example, if you're applying to engineering, have you taken physics and calculus and an engineering elective, for example, if it's available? I know it seems so crazy to think about a college major when you're, a 9th, 10th grader in high school. But if your student's dream school is UT, we encourage you to find the opportunity to build fit to major activities over the years. For example, if you're planning to major in business, we know that taking calculus is really important to be able to be competitive at McCombs. So thinking ahead to make sure you're on that track to take calculus is really wise. Anything to add there, anybody with transcript? All right, great. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, testing. So, testing is really interesting at UT. Even pre-COVID, when testing was not optional, test scores have never been a hugely important part of your application. We've had students since UT became test optional, though, in many different majors be very successful without submitting test scores. Today, they're still test optional, but as many of you have probably heard, there's a little bit of a trend toward colleges starting to require test scores again. And UT may well revisit their testing policy. We don't know yet. But even if they do, it's important to know how UT looks at test scores. Instead of looking at your overall score, they really look at the specific section that applies to the major you have chosen. So for example, if you are applying to business, they're going to be looking closely at that math score. If you had a low test score in math, for example, but you still want to apply to business, but you have high math grades and high math rigor and calculus, then we'd encourage you to probably not send your test scores, assuming UT remained test optional, because your grades would build a much stronger case for you. Another example, if you're applying to communications, they're going to look closely at that reading score. So our guidance around testing for most students is really to just play hard at test prep, go after the best score you possibly can because it can't hurt you, right? But don't stress too much about it because if UT remains test optional, you actually don't have to submit your scores. Even if they do reinstate testing requirements, just know that UT is going to emphasize the section that relates to your major when evaluating your application. Anything that I missed, guys?
You nailed it, Jules.
All right, next slide. Thanks, Delara. Okay, so in the competitive majors, fit to major is really, really critical. So, the ones that Delara was talking about earlier. It's just a math problem, right? There's more competitive students than there are spaces for students in these impacted majors. Business, engineering, computer science, biology, nursing, architecture, psychology. So those are some of the majors where it's even more critical that you not only have good fit to major, but that you actually have depth of experience in a major. So for example, if you're going to apply in computer science, you need to show that you are already an experienced software developer or coder. They don't want students who just think they're interested in computer science. They really want experienced software developers. So that means you really have to think far ahead and start testing out what you think you might be interested in those early 9th, and 10th grade years to make sure that you're honing in on your intended major so that you have the time to generate those impactful experiences and really show that fit to major on your resume.
Another thing that admissions teams are looking at more and more, in addition to those growth experiences, you really want to be thinking about skills. What specific skills are you developing, for example, in computer science through those experiences? And being kind of intentional about what those are. Okay, I can already code in Python, so I want to learn a different coding language, or I want to apply that to my love of data science. So being intentional about not just the experiences that you're having, but what skills and abilities are you developing through those experiences?
Totally. And so students and parents ask us all the time, okay, what exactly is fit to, what does that look like on a student's application? Which is a great question. And what it is it's basically 3 to 4 robust activities directly related to a student's major. These could be summer programs, could be a volunteer experience, could be a specific course that you take, could be a summer job. Summer jobs are great. Parents always ask us if summer jobs are, they should avoid them, and absolutely not. Summer job can be a great way to show fit to major. Could be an independent project, an internship, which is basically some, glorified shadowing in the high school stage. And we're going to talk a bit more about the UT expanded resume later, but these are all, this is a pretty good rule of thumb, like 3 to 4 robust activities that ideally build upon each other over the years to show fit to major. So here's a great example of a student who was applying as a business major. And you can see how each one of these items, these activities they did sort of built upon the previous one. So for example, the student who took an online business course in 10th grade then decided to interview people, like informational interviewing, which we always suggest is a great option for students, is just talking to people about what they do. Exposure is such a need for students in high school to figure out what careers are out there. And that's a great way to help them find that out, is by talking to people in different careers. So this student did that, and then did a pre-business summer program, and then joined a business club and started a business, right? So got into entrepreneurship, and then realized marketing was very important in entrepreneurship, and did an internship. So all these things just built upon another and created a great thread and narrative for this student to communicate through their resume and essays at UT. Next one, please, Delara. Here's another case study, and this is an interesting one because, of course, most students are not going to know right early on like what exactly their major is. A lot of them are going to try one and then realize maybe not, and then try another one, right? So here's an example of a student who really liked math and thought maybe engineering might be of interest. So they tried out a little engineering internship, even going out of town to do it, which was mostly shadowing someone that her parents knew. And then realized that she didn't really like it. So she pivoted and realized one thing she really loved was Excel and finance. And so again, that informational interviewing, she started interviewing people in finance careers that her parents helped her connect with. And then she spent time shadowing a CPA. So after getting an internship through the person I'm sure she was shadowing with, I think that was the way it went, she volunteered to be an accountant for her school trip. So it was really showing impact. One of the things that UT really, really highly values is when students show initiative and impact. And this student did both by volunteering to, give back, to be an accountant for her school trip and helping manage money and logistics. And then by really stepping up and taking the initiative to become treasurer of her Girl Scout troop. So all these things built on each other, even as she pivoted from one interest to another. And it really let her showcase some great skills and abilities on her application, including initiative and impact. Anything else, guys?
Well, the great news about those experiences, and I would say great news to me because I'm an essay nerd, and to all of us because we are essay nerds, UT does give students the opportunity to talk about these experiences. And we're going to talk about essays in a little bit, but I will say that the students not only have the experiences to share on their expanded resume that we're going to talk about, they also have stories to tell and growth experiences to share as they're writing the different essays, one of which will be, how do you fit to this major, right, for UT Austin? But all of those experiences not only help them gain confidence, gain awareness, kind of as in their own interests and capabilities, but then UT offers you the opportunity to tell those stories. And we really see a difference in the kinds of stories and the kinds of essays that students are able to share when they have had some hands-on experiences versus when, maybe they haven't. The other thing that I think is important to remember, and I will say sometimes it surprises students and parents, is that you actually get to talk about activities and explore and participate in activities related to your major all the way until the month you graduate. And so it's not that all of that has to be done before fall of senior year when you submit your application. You actually get to talk about some stuff maybe you're planning to do and haven't done yet. And so the runway for that engagement and that fit to major might be a little longer than you think, because actually you have all of senior year to play around with too. So on to expanded resume. So one of the things that students find when they're applying to college is there's not a lot of space available in the common application to share the stuff they've done. Well, UT really encourages students to submit a resume, and they prefer what we call an expanded resume. And I wish, and I say this every time we talk about resumes, that we could pick a different word than resume, because this animal, this expanded resume for UT is so different than what most adults think of when they think about a resume, right? This is, I like to think of it, it's more of an inventory of a student's engagement that includes a list of every experience a student has had outside of the classroom. So going from the summer before 9th grade all the way until they graduate. It could be 3 or 4 pages or even more. And it doesn't just have to include conventional experiences like school clubs or sports. Could be independent. We had a student one time who just took apart a computer because he was really curious about what that was like. That went on his expanded resume. We had another student who was working on a car, rebuilding an engine with his grandfather. That went on his resume. And so we really, basically, when students say, does this count? The answer is yes. So if you're asking yourself, I wonder if this counts, if it's something the student did outside of the classroom, the answer is yes, right? Chances are the answer is yes. So in addition to just titles and dates and kind of responsibilities, which a professional resume might include, an expanded resume includes their experiences, their activities, their roles, and sometimes maybe just what they observed when they were shadowing, right? Or maybe it had to do with how they engaged others in that activity. We always call that like the special sauce of adding in, not only did I do this, but I invited other people to do it with me. Not only did I do this service project, I invited my dance team to join me in this service project. That's a clear example, especially from a UT admissions perspective, of initiative and impact, right? Literally just inviting someone else. It doesn't have to be, in order to demonstrate initiative and impact, you don't have to start a nonprofit, right? You literally could make a positive impact on 1 or 2 students and no one asked you to do it. You just did it because you thought it was needed. That's initiative and impact. So we're going to look at a couple of different resumes and really kind of point out what fit to major that we keep talking about looks like. Because of UT's focus on fit to major, we actually recommend that students organize their resume, not necessarily in kind of backwards chronological order like you might a professional resume, but putting those fit to major experiences right up top. And so we're going to look at a couple of resumes and I'll kind of talk through what we see. And Delara and Julie, y'all feel free to jump in. What you might see, for example, for a student who might later be interested in a career in medicine, I always like to point out that just because a student may want to go to medical school, you're not required to major in biology. Most students feel like if I'm going pre-med, I have to major in biology. The answer is you don't. There are prerequisites that you'll take and things that you will do to get ready for med school, but you could be a journalism major and apply to med school as long as you're taking those prereqs. So the first thing I will mention is that there's tons of majors available for students that will provide that pathway to pre-med. So that's the first thing to remember about that. But let's say this was a student who was very passionate about science and biology and health science specifically. You can see in this resume that this student served as a volunteer at Dell Children's. Probably had to apply for that. Maybe a family member helped them connect. Maybe they just went online and reached out to the volunteer coordinator and said, how can I help? They joined this volunteer cohort and ultimately engaged so much that they were actually promoted to a volunteer leader, right, as a teen, and they stuck with it. So not only did they do it in December of 2021, they actually continued it throughout the rest of their years of high school, right? And eventually became kind of a mentor to other volunteers, right? Then you can see that they kind of kicked it up a notch, liked that experience, gained that exposure, possibly some skills. Maybe they met one or two people that told them about their jobs and how they had gotten there, right? A lot of volunteer experiences are great opportunities to talk to people about how they got to the jobs where they are. This student also joined a medical service trip. So you can see they tried out, volunteered at a hospital, kept doing it, and then went a little deeper, left the country, and then developed and applied other skills. The student happened to be a Spanish speaker who had studied some Spanish. This was an opportunity for them to apply and further develop that skill while continuing to deepen their experience in a medical related activity while making an impact on others by providing service, right? And doing volunteering in a local hospital in Mexico. So you can really see almost the trajectory of engagement in just this specific example. Okay, so engineering, one of the things that is really cool about exploring engineering is oftentimes a high school may have some pre-professional coursework that relates specifically to engineering, right? Now, the good news is if your high school doesn't offer this, you're not penalized for it, right? Transcripts are reviewed based on the opportunities a student at that high school has. But if you think you might be interested in engineering, like that case study that Julie shared, this is a great time to test it out, right? You love math and science. People say, oh, you love math and science, maybe you should be an engineer. Take a pre-engineering course, test it out. If you do enjoy it, and then you kind of keep going through that, the projects that you do, the hands-on projects that coursework often entails can be something that you share in your resume. You may choose to go a little deeper in these projects because of your interest, and that you can share on an expanded resume. In addition, you can see in this student, again, went after a pre-college program specifically for women in engineering at UT Austin. And I'm going to stop right here and say, and we talk about this in our summer program, choosing a summer program at a college doesn't necessarily give you an in with that college. What it does give you, though, is great experience at that campus that maybe you talk about in that essay, and it might just be a great opportunity to explore that major. But don't think because you want to go to UT that you have to do a UT summer program. Not necessarily the case. But you can see that this student tested out their interest in engineering in that high school coursework, and then went after a hands-on program at UT where they got to explore it further. Likely, when they got to their major essay, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, they were able to talk about the progression of this engagement. I first took this engineering class because I had really enjoyed the science project that I did when I submitted to the science fair in middle school. So I decided to take engineering. I enjoyed that. And so I took this class and met this teacher and that teacher. And then I got connected with this program at UT. And here's what I've learned, and here's what I'm excited about now. So it's almost like we've got a story to tell that has a beginning, middle, and we don't have an end yet, right? The end is the future. And so, and that's always a fun story to tell. Great. And then this one, psychology, maybe I would say that tends to be a popular major. We already talked about how it's impacted, right? A lot of people decide psychology because it is kind of this broad major that lots of people are fascinated by. But this student went at exploring psychology in a really interesting way. They did a study abroad program where they kind of experienced a lot of psychological principles around community and what it's like to connect and communicate and how that affects people and their mental health and their self-esteem and all of that. And then they went on to dive a little deeper into specific psychology at Brown. Delara, did you want to jump in here? And then they took those experiences and joined the teen teaching program, which was actually a class at their school, where they took the knowledge, skills, and self-awareness that they had developed and then applied it in a way that actually helped them develop it more while helping out some students in the school district. And so again, this tale has, you can see the student is an explorer. They're taking initiative, they're going a little deeper, and then they're taking that skills and awareness and applying it to serve and support others. So that's also, I mean, this makes it an ideal scenario.
Okay, so now I'm going to take a moment to share the role that essays play in UT's particular admissions process. So in general, UT is probably one of the most labor-intensive universities to write for in the application because they ask for 4 separate essays from their applicants, which amounts to approximately 2,000 words of writing. And I'm going to speak deeply about each essay and offer some general guidance about each one shortly. There's the main essay, the personal statement, or what UT refers to as Essay A. You might also hear this essay referred to as the Common App essay. It's a lot of names for the same piece of writing, but it's that long college essay that your student writes and submits to every school they're applying to. And UT also asks for 3 short answer essays specific to UT. And before I talk a little bit about each essay and the role they play in a student's particular application to UT, I want to provide just some general guidance on essay writing. Essays are your students' chance to set themselves apart in their application, to give a voice to their application, and to offer information and stories about themselves that might not be available just by looking at their transcript or their resume or reading their letters of recommendation. This advice is especially key in that personal statement, the 500 to 700 word piece of writing that your student submits to the majority of their colleges. Did you want to jump in, Allison?
Oh, I'm just getting ready.
Oh, okay. I'm glad. It should be, so this personal statement should be in story form. It shouldn't be an analytical piece of writing that you might see in the classroom. It shouldn't be summative. It's not a highlight reel. Your student should not be focused on telling the entire story of their life. That's not appropriate for this kind of essay, nor can you do justice to 17 years of living in only 500 words. And you should really that should really be apparent based on the prompt in this that UT offers for this essay. What unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career that have shaped who you are today? So the bulk of this essay should really be focused on your students' high school years and how a particular experience or moment from high school have helped them become who they are. So, like I said, your student should really be sharing something about themselves in this essay, something that's key to who they are, a quality, an experience, something that extends beyond their resume and their transcript. They might consider, for example, their hobbies, their personal values, a particularly valuable learning experience or growth moment that they've encountered. And while they can write about an activity that's shaped them, that's often a very common and helpful strategy in these essays. it's important to reflect on why that activity was so impactful, what role it played in shaping them, and why it was important to who they are overall. Something that's also key in these essays is to think about growth. How has your student grown throughout high school as exemplified through this particular quality or experience? And when it comes to writing about growth or trying to measure growth in a piece of writing, I encourage y'all to think about contrast. There should be some sort of tension or difference from who your student is at the start of this essay and who they are at the end of this essay. And a final note about the personal statement is the style. It's important that this is an essay that sounds like a 17-year-old wrote it. It should look and sound, like someone who's about to graduate high school wrote this essay, and that's what colleges expect. That's what they're looking for. They don't want something perfectly polished and professional level. Obviously, it should be proofread and free of errors, but it doesn't need to sound like something beyond what your student is capable of. It should be authentic to who they are. Julie and Allison, do either of you have any favorite essay topics you'd care to share from students in the past?
Absolutely. I had a student a couple of years ago who wrote the most interesting essay just about how hard it was for people to pronounce her name and all the different experiences she'd had in high school at the beginning of a class where the teacher couldn't pronounce her name and she had to pronounce it for him, and what that kind of, and how that had formed her and what perspective it gave her about belonging and ensuring that others belong. And it wasn't her first choice either. She tried another essay that was something that was, it didn't quite, and then she was like, wait, I have something that always happens to me. Maybe I should just talk about this. So when we say it doesn't need to be a neon moment, a lot of the best topics are even what might be considered a little mundane, right? So amazing stories about, baking with a family member, a traditional, or making a traditional dish. So there's all kinds of experiences that students have that are unique and authentic to them that may not be like, earth shattering, right? But and when I tell students that I'm working with, it's not even so much that it's a unique idea, it's something essential. So if someone knew you for 6 months, what is something or a story they would likely hear, or something they would learn about you? Oh, they'd learn about how I always go check on my brother who's a freshman during lunch, right? That might be the start of a beautiful essay about that relationship and how it's evolved.
Great. Thank you, Allison. All right. So the personal statement is only a quarter of the essay writing that UT applicants will be doing. There are also 3 short answer questions that are between 250 to 300 words, and in many ways require just as much care, attention, and effort as that main personal statement does. These questions are written in a very straightforward manner, and the answers should be just as straightforward. And given their short word count, I caution students against using the same kind of creative flourishes they might feel inclined to use in their personal statement, because the word count is so limited and we really need to pack as much as we can into those short answers. Instead, the responses to your UT short answer questions should be evidence-based. And by that, I mean any claim your student makes about themselves or their interests or their goals should be backed up with an anecdote about their interests, activities, coursework, and experiences. That's what I mean when I say you need to supplement this essay response with evidence from your life, some sort of anecdote that you can point to that illustrates the point you're making about yourself. And as always, as everything goes with UT Austin, you should always be thinking of ways to enhance your case for fit to major through these short answer essays. You can sprinkle in something about your major aspirations in each of the 3 short answers.
We had a great question that just came through.
Yes.
About first choice major and how many majors a student can be read for.
Mhm.
Laura, do you want to hit that one?
Sure. So students in the app, this is kind of tricky because UT gives students a lot of options, but they aren't really clear how those options are put into effect when it comes to admissions decisions. So in general, students have the opportunity to list their top 2 to 3 majors in their UT application. However, those second choice and third choice majors are really only accounted for if your student is in the top 6%. So that's really where those choices come into play. Students who are not in the top 6% can put in a second choice major, and it's rare that they get put into their second choice major, but there have been, a small handful of cases where that has happened. In general, though, those first, second, and third choice options are typically reserved for the 6% students.
Which is why that fit to major is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in the top 6%, that's your one read and review. And like Julie said, they're looking at all of the pieces of your application and how it aligns with that major. And so if that major isn't a great fit, that might be the only chance that that application has to be read.
Yeah, great. All right, so the 3 short answer questions, let's talk about them a little bit more particularly. And at the end of my spiel on these 3 short answers, I also have a few sample essays that I'm going to talk y'all through. What all of these essays have in common is that your student must spend time in these essays not only sharing about themselves when they answer the prompt, but also imagining how they'll integrate themselves into the UT academic and social community. It's really important to know UT well when you're writing these responses. So before you even begin drafting, I like to encourage students to think of them as a whole and ensure that you are pulling from distinct experiences from your life without too much overlap. I like to describe the UT suite of essays to my students as kind of like a full photo album of who you are and what you've been like in high school. Every photo, or in this case, every essay you write, should be offering up a new angle, a new piece of scenery, a new experience, all while showcasing you in a positive light. So by the time your application reader gets to the end of your photo album or your application, they should have a fuller understanding of who you are and what you can bring to the university. So before you start drafting, do some planning and sketch out the experiences that you want to share in each essay to make sure that you're giving a fuller picture of yourself and your experiences. All right, so this first essay, the major essay, asks, why are you interested in the major you indicated as your first choice major? So this, before you even begin writing this essay, make sure that the major you are listing is an actual major at UT and that you are naming it correctly and that it matches with the first choice major that you indicate in your application. Now, when it comes to writing this essay, this is the primary area students should take advantage of to make their case for their particular major. I always recommend students start off straightforwardly by stating their major outright. I want to major in chemistry at UT Austin. I hope to major in English at UT Austin. From there, I recommend they think of, their top 3 experiences they've had in their area that relates to this major and share how that experience formed their overall interest and readiness for that particular major. As we've mentioned previously in this webinar, these experiences to draw from can include coursework, throughout the classroom experiences, jobs, hobbies, any independent interests. You can even offer, one of each if you have that. But it's really important to kind of build the thread that shows how this particular experience led to your interest and readiness for your college major at UT. There's the second half of this essay that now focuses entirely on how your student plans to take advantage of the resources within their major at UT Austin. In short, why chemistry at UT Austin specifically? Every university in the country has a chemistry department, but not every university in the country has a chemistry department with the resources that UT's does. So spend some time researching. I typically recommend to my students to spend several hours researching. I think, that's less than that feels insufficient to me, to find courses that they look forward to taking, Professors they hope to engage in a mentorship relationship with, student organizations, research initiatives, opportunities only available at UT that they see themselves engaging in so that they can paint a picture of how they imagine their academic life unfolding over 4 years. So it's important to not only make a case for how your own interests relate to your major, but to also make the case of how you will take advantage of UT's offerings within that major. All right, so next we have the leadership essay. And what I want to highlight about this prompt is not the leadership component, but the impact component. So the prompt is, describe how your experiences, perspectives, talents, and/or involvement in leadership activities at your school, job, community, or within your family will help you make an impact both in and out of the classroom while enrolled at UT. And what's important to note about this prompt is their definition of leadership activities is quite broad. So it really accounts for students who, may be club presidents or on student council, but it also can account for students who may have significant family responsibilities, who work after school. And so really don't get hung up on traditional leadership roles, but instead think about how you're engaged and how you're able to make an impact in the particular ways that you express your engagement. When it comes to writing this essay, students should pick a particular experience they've had and really think about the impact that they've had by virtue of that experience. It could be a massive impact, like, if your student happens to have a gift for fundraising and has really done a lot for, like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Or it could be a more personal impact, like informally mentoring a new debate team member who is having trouble kind of getting the lay of the land in this new organization. You spend some time describing the activity with a special focus on the impact that you've had, and then extend that impact to the UT community. And this is kind of an exercise of imagination to be able to extend that impact. But how do you imagine yourself continuing this impact once you're in your university? To do that, pick a handful of student organizations or campus groups that you hope to join and project how you see yourself making similar impacts within these organizations. And then finally, there's the Change the World essay, which is a newer essay topic to UT. I think it was introduced 2 years ago now. Is that correct? 2 years? I think
Feel
so.
like that. Two
Yeah.
2 to 3, something like
And
that.
this prompt says the core purpose of UT is to transform lives for the benefit of society. Please share how you believe your experience at UT will prepare you to change the world. So this essay is really kind of dovetailing off of UT's particular mission statement, which is what starts here, changes the world. They are looking for students who, like in the second essay, are willing to take chances and make impacts on themselves and others. To answer this question, I recommend students think about a problem or issue they hope to solve. This is another opportunity to build in fit to major. So if your student is an aspiring engineer, they can write about an issue of infrastructure in Texas, or even, the gender gap in STEM. If they're an English major, they could write about declining literacy rates or their passion for bilingual education. There are millions of problems in the world. It's important for your student to think about the ones that resonate with them and resonate with their major and comprise things they want to spend their 4 years at UT solving for. So the first half of the essay, you spend outlining the issue, how it personally affects you, and why you find it meaningful, why it's something you think it's worthwhile to solve for. And then again, it's time to do some research. Hit the UT website, search for organizations like faculty members, research groups, student groups, or other initiatives doing similar work. I've been helping students write their UT essays for 5 years now, and I've yet to encounter a world or societal issue that UT doesn't have a resource for. So really think imaginatively and use everything UT has available to you to make your case for this essay.
And those resources can be outside the major, right? The
Sure.
topic or the issue could be inside the related to the major, but those resources, UT really wants to see how you're going to maximize this, huge public flagship top tier research institution And I always tell my students, like, the special sauce on every one of these essays, even though they don't specifically ask it, is in each one of these describe how you at UT is going to make the people around you more successful, more engaged, right? Yes, I'm going to fundraise for this particular organization that I've worked with all through my time in high school. And guess what? This time, I've got thousands of Longhorns that I can include in doing this with me, right? UT needs to have people who are engaging others, supporting others, and empowering others, because there's just a lot of kids at UT. So they're looking for students who, when they're there, the students around them are better off, right? And so we can make it real easy by putting something like that in. Yes, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to invite my classmates to join me. Is a great way to just demonstrate over and over again that you're going to be someone that engages those around you in the UT resources.
Great. Thank you, Allison. All right, so these next two slides are some sample examples of effective essays. We have one major, one change the world essay. This is a major essay for a student who wants to major in communications at UT Austin. We will be including this in the follow-up materials, but I just want to touch briefly on some things that make this essay effective. So you can see in the just by looking at it, it's in that part 1, part 2 format. Part 1, the first paragraph, is all about the student and their experiences. Part 2 is what they look forward to taking advantage of within the College of Communications. When it comes to paragraph 1, the student is listing, it looks like 4 to 5 different experiences they've had that have slowly kind of added steam to their interest in communications, from multiple jobs to a side hustle where they make study guides, to even taking over marketing work independently at the job they have towards the end of high school. And then you can see in paragraph 2 that they're highlighting several resources within the College of Communications, things you can literally point to on the website, just saying, illustrious faculty, or, the Moody School of Communication is the second best college of communication in the country. Those things aren't enough to demonstrate your interest in that school. So, they're highlighting the Texas Creative Program, they're highlighting global cultures and ethics courses, the Texas Advertising Group, as well as the built-in internship opportunity that comes within the Moody School of Communication. So, within each of these paragraphs, there are 4 to 5 reasons that this student would be a good communications major, and 4 to 5 reasons why this student would be a good fit for UT's communications program in particular. All right. And here we have a change the world essay that, very similarly follows the format of the previous essay. The first paragraph is all about the student and their view of what the issue is. For this student's case, the issue is the kind of vulnerability and isolation that senior citizens in care homes felt during the pandemic. And the student, even in this case, started working towards alleviating that issue while still in high school. They didn't wait till they got to UT to start changing the world. They started doing making handmade cards by themselves, distributing them to senior citizens' homes or care homes. And then they got multiple students, up to 50 students in their high school, involved in that same initiative, which they're then say in paragraph 2, they're going to continue doing at UT by getting their fellow Longhorns involved. But they're also going to take advantage of resources within UT to further that cause, not just by continuing with their card writing effort, but by getting engaged and learning how to write policy that might make it so that senior citizens become less vulnerable over time, and at least in terms of how we treat them governmentally and systemically. So in paragraph 2, you can see multiple resources that they're going to engage in at UT from different sectors of the university too, student organizations, but also coursework and, taking different types of courses as well that will teach them the skills they need to change the world in the way they want.
Absolutely. Students get to think big here, but they could also think small. I've had great essays about mentoring and the mentoring experiences they had in high school and how they will continue to not only do that at UT, but maybe engage in some research about the impact of that. And so I like to tell my students this is a little bit like a scavenger hunt for opportunities here.
All right, and honors programs. This is going to be the last major component we touch on in our webinar today. There are several honors programs at UT. I think there are probably around 10 of them. And some of them are affiliated with a college. And I'll review some of the more popular ones in depth in just a minute here. Honors programs at UT typically require a separate application, and there's usually a scale of work involved. You know, some just require a resume, some require several additional essays and recommendations. Students can either submit their honors program application along with their entire UT application, or they can submit it separately after they've submitted their application to UT. As I mentioned, applying to an honors program often requires additional work, such as a letter of recommendation that has not been submitted to the university before. So from a third source, the expanded resume is usually required, as well as several additional writing prompts. One of the features or benefits to keep in mind of applying to an honors program, especially for students who are kind of on the line in terms of competitiveness to a particular major at UT, is that applying to an honors program garners your application an additional read by the honors committee. So if your honors application is strong, if your UT application is already strong, there have been a few cases we've noticed where applying to the honors program can tip the scales in terms of a student's entrance to UT. It doesn't work in most cases, but it is a benefit for strong students. Every UT college, save for the College of Nursing and the College of Architecture, has their own honors program. So for example, there's liberal arts honors, engineering honors, Moody honors. Some of the most distinctive programs are Plan 2, which is UT's honors major. Our own Allison Randall is a Plan 2 graduate. Plan 2 students major in Plan 2. It is an honors major, as well as an additional major of their choosing within the College of Liberal Arts. It guarantees a smaller cohort of students. And the classes typically are a bit more rigorous and demanding than a typical UT class, which is already rigorous and demanding. There's Touring Scholars, which is the premier computer science honors program. There are also a few combined honors programs, like the Honors Electrical and Computer Science, I misspoke. Honors Electrical and Computer Engineering and Business Program, ECB, and the Texas Computer Science and Business. If your student is thinking about applying to an honors program, it can be an excellent supplement to their education, helping make a large university like UT feel a little bit smaller and more personal, but it requires planning ahead to make sure that they have all the components of that honors application ready to go.
Thank you. So important. It really can make those huge, that huge university really get the benefits of a small experience within the big one. Timeline wise, we typically recommend that our students submit their UT application for that priority deadline. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One, we feel just it's good for kids to be done with applying to college sooner rather than later, so that they can fully enjoy their senior year and all that comes with. For students who apply to that priority deadline, in fact, we encourage our students to apply as early as September, mainly because generating the writing that you need for the UT application, like Delora mentioned, generates so much great raw material that you can repurpose for other schools. That can be a great strategy. Also, it can yield answers a little sooner than the regular decision opportunity, although this year that was a little different due to the number of applications. But it is a good strategy for students to submit their UT application earlier in the fall. But we do recommend that they don't submit a rushed application. Is never a good application. And so the most important thing is to submit that application when it's complete, accurate, and polished. We're so delighted to get to share our passion for guiding students in their journey to UT Austin. And here's one of the, even though UT obviously has become hyper competitive, one of the things that I think is so valuable about guiding students on the path to UT Austin, whether they end up there or not, is the focus on engagement and exploration, which is good for students no matter where you end up. And so that's an added benefit of kind of this journey.